Alright, we got a new piece of equipment in the shop here. It's a nice little Yamaha generator. It's not actually mine, I'm just working on it. This nice little machine here runs quiet, sips fuel. It's been in operation for a few years. However, it's developed some kind of minor issues. The main thing I noticed is it was needing the choke to start it back up even when it was hot. So that's kind of a sign maybe something's going on in that carb getting plugged up. And the other thing too is it has this economy mode where you turn that on, and it used to immediately, idle down real low and run in economy mode until you put a load on it, and then it would idle up, and you'd have full power. Well, now when you hit that switch, it would take maybe 5 minutes or better before it would eventually idle down. So I'm thinking maybe something's going on in the carb there, and the governor's maybe trying to keep it from stalling or something. But we're going to give it an overhaul, change oil, probably go through the carburetor and see what's up. Now, of course, I prefer old school because everything's exposed. I mean, all this plastic is nice for convenience and it looks clean, but yeah, you can't get to anything. So popping off those panels are pretty self-explanatory. There's just some Phillips head screws you got to take out. But there's no obvious sign of where the carburetor is. There's no access panel. So you get out the flashlight and you kind of peek up in there. I believe that's the carb there. So we're going to have to pull off this side panel. Now there's a couple of screws on top holding this thing in, and then there's a couple of like clips or something, because you just got to actually pull on this to actually pop it out of there. Like that. Be careful not to break those. So there's actually 3 of those little posts, one up top. Boy, they really went to town with all this foam for sound deadening. So there's the carb. Might be able to get to that, but I'm thinking we're probably going to end up having to pull this other framework here off the side. It's held in with some more bolts there, and might have to take some of those screws out of that top handle there too, so we can separate that. So once you get this outer framework all unbolted and stuff, there's this rubber gasket that's over the gas fuel tank cap. So you got to work this up and over here. It's a little bit of a bear, but just take your time and try not to rip it. Yeah, just spray a little bit of WD-40 around that gasket there. That'll help it slide off. Yeah, you just got to work it like side to side, up over one thread at a time. And we're in. Well, the oil needs changed on this anyway, so at least we'll have a little cleaner access there and be able to get any of the, rogue oil that falls down in the bottom, clean it up. I mean, maybe I'm missing it or it's on the other side, but I don't see an easy access drain port on here. I mean, maybe they just expect you to kind of pull that and dump it on its side. So we just pulled the crankcase breather out of the way, and there's a couple of 10mm nuts that you take off there, and that should get you the intake off and the carb. Now, as always, be kind of gingerly when you're trying to remove the carb and these parts if you want to reuse those gaskets in there. Actually, a bunch of oil sitting down the bottom of the filter here, so we're gonna have to clean that out. And I don't know if this thing was tipped on its side or exactly what's going on there, but good to give everything a thorough once over. See, now you have these studs on here holding the carb, so you've got to actually take it off quite a ways to actually get it out of there. Luckily, between the flex of the whole case and the flex in the motor mounts down here, you can kind of just push on the fuel tank and kind of expand this whole thing open just enough to slide that carburetor off. And once you do, now you got a lot more room to take off the choke cable and the fuel line and all that other stuff. Now make sure you put a piece of paper towel or something in there to keep any crud from falling in the engine. So of course we popped the cap off of this thing just to see what was in there, and upon further inspection, this is the throttle control, I guess. It's a little stepper motor or servo or something in there. Yeah, there's no mechanical linkage. for a governor system like you usually find on a generator. So I guess that is how you're able to just flip a switch and change the throttle characteristics and where it idles and stuff. There's still a manual stop for idle speed control, but I think that's about it. Now we just got to make sure we can take this thing off of here because there's no disconnect for the wire without screwing anything up. I'm guessing that it's keyed, or there's a slot in there or something that we should be able to take this off and just don't move it and then put it back together. We'll make note that we got it at full throttle right now. Okay, upon further review, this little motor arm here just kind of sits in between those two tabs, and that's what works the throttle. And when you take things apart, the throttle wants to snap back closed, and this little spring's going to go flying. So, yeah, make sure you contain that if you're going to take this thing apart like that. I'd really hate to be wanting to clean too much of this carb for fear that you might get some carb cleaner up into that electronic piece there that looks pretty expensive to me. So, yeah, watch the spring and watch all these washers and spacers that are going to fall everywhere. Alright, on to the next step. So there we go. Pop that bottom bolt out of the bottom of the bowl. And that comes off. You can pull the pin for your float and your needle. And pull the one jet out of the top. And this was actually the only one that had any film on it, really. It wasn't bad, but that's a very small jet, so it doesn't take much to start clogging those up. Everything else looks good inside, so we're going to reassemble and hopefully it works as it should. Now if you just wanted to leave the carburetor on the machine and drain the fuel out, that's what that little drain screw is for. Just loosen that up, and as long as the bowl's not too filled with crud, it'll flow out of there. Helps if you got water in the fuel or something like that. Yeah, you're going to have fun putting that little spring in there. It just takes a third hand or so. Might as well pull the plug and check that while you're in there. And it might not be a bad idea either to pull that spark arrestor. Make sure it's not plugged up with carbon. And there you go. And the rest of the assembly is just the reverse of what you did.